The starship Aegis hung in the void, like a metallic chrysalis, its gunmetal hull reflecting the distant light of Arcturus. The massive vessel served as both mining outpost and diplomatic hub for the Galactic Coalition housing representatives from 17 different species, working in uneasy cooperation. Among them were exactly 23 humans, a species both valued and feared by the Coalition. In the thermal scanning chamber of Dock Bay, 2 security officers stood at attention. Peronexian, with 4 compound eyes and chitinous blue skin, adjusted the sensitivity on the scanner. Beside them, Berg, a hulking Urson, with a thick gray pelt and impressive tusks, checked the safety on his immobilizer pistol. "Human incoming," Per announced, mandibles clicking nervously. "Oxidize R, returning from shore leave on Arcturus Station." Berg grunted, the sound rumbling from deep within his massive chest. "Rusty, that one's trouble." "All humans are trouble," Per replied, 6-fingered hand hovering over the emergency containment button. "Especially after shore leave." The airlock hissed open, revealing a stocky figure in standard-issue blue and gray utilities. Rusty strode in auburn hair, cropped close to his scalp face, weathered from too many planetary excursions. A small duffel bag hung from one shoulder, and he wore a bulky, insulated jacket that seemed out of place in the climate-controlled environment of the Aegis. "Home, sweet home," Rusty announced with a grin that showed too many teeth for the comfort of either security officer. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators, and their expressions sometimes triggered instinctive fear responses in other species. Standard decontamination protocol, human oxidize. Per stated, formally trying to maintain professionalism despite their discomfort. "Please proceed to the scanner." Rusty rolled his eyes, but stepped forward into the circular scanning platform. "Every damn time. You'd think after 3 years aboard you guys would know I'm harmless." Berg snorted a sound that conveyed deep skepticism. "Coalition regulations, no exceptions." The scanner hummed as its beams passed over Rusty's form, collecting biological data and cross-referencing against the ship's database of known pathogens and parasites. Per watched the readouts carefully compound, eyes processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. Suddenly, the scanner emitted a harsh, blaring alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. Per's chitinous exoskeleton stiffened in alarm, and Berg immediately brought his immobilizer to bear. "Biohazard detected," Per announced, their normally measured voice rising several octaves. "Unregistered life form detected within your outerwear." Rusty froze, genuine confusion crossing his features. "What, that's impossible." Berg moved to block the exit, his massive form creating an impassable barrier. "Remove outer garment, slowly." "Look, there must be some mistake," Rusty protested, but the wild look in Berg's eyes convinced him to comply. With exaggerated slowness, he began to unzip the insulated jacket. Per was already activating the quarantine protocols, their fingers flying across the control panel. "Potential Class 3 biological contaminant. All personnel stand by for—" "Wait," Rusty interrupted, holding the jacket partly open. "I know what it is. It's not dangerous. Coalition Security Protocol 742B prohibits the transport of unregistered biological entities aboard interstellar vessels." Per recited mechanically, antennae quivering with tension. "Particularly from human sources, which have historically caused 17 major containment breaches in Coalition space." Rusty sighed and opened the jacket fully. From an inner pocket, a small, furry head emerged, eyes blinking sleepily in the harsh light of the decontamination chamber. 2 pointed ears twitched, and a tiny pink nose sniffed the air cautiously. "What in the 16 moons is that?" Berg demanded, immobilizer still trained on Rusty, but his tusked jaw hanging open in surprise. "It's a cat," Rusty replied gently, extracting the small creature from his jacket. It was barely larger than his hand, with orange-striped fur and large green eyes. "A kitten, actually. Found her half-frozen outside the station's waste processing plant. Couldn't just leave her there." Per and Berg exchanged confused glances, neither familiar with Earth fauna beyond the most basic briefing materials. "Is it a weapon?" Berg asked clearly, struggling to understand why anyone would conceal such a small creature. "What? No." Rusty cradled the kitten protectively. "She's a pet. You know, companion animal from Earth." Purr approached cautiously, compound eyes fixed on the tiny creature. "Unknown biological entity must be scanned and classified before proceeding. Place it in the containment field." Rusty hesitated, then gently set the kitten on the small platform Purr indicated. A shimmer of energy surrounded it, and the scanner began a more detailed analysis. As they waited for the results, Rusty's mind drifted back to his shore leave and how he'd come to acquire his furry stowaway. Bah. 2 days earlier, Rusty had been assigned to an emergency repair on the exterior of Arcturus Station. A micrometeoroid had damaged one of the station's primary communication arrays, and with most of the regular maintenance crew down with Regulan flu, Rusty had volunteered for the extravehicular activity. "You sure about this, Oxidize?" The station's operations manager, a lanky Meridian with translucent skin that revealed the complex network of neural pathways beneath, had asked with genuine concern. Surface temperatures dropping to -70°C with the station entering Arcturus's shadow. EVA suits aren't rated for more than 4 hours in those conditions. Rusty had shrugged, already pulling on the thermal underlay. "I'll be fine. Humans are pretty good with cold, all things considered." The Meridian's neural pathways had pulsed with skeptical purple light. "Your species' overconfidence is statistically correlated with a 63% higher accident rate than other coalition members." "Yeah, but we get the job done," Rusty had replied with a wink. "Besides, I've got a secret weapon." He pulled a small silver flask from his pocket and took a swig, feeling the burn of synthetic adrenaline and modified caffeine compounds as they hit his system. The repair had taken 6.5 hours, well beyond safety parameters. When Rusty finally returned to the airlock, his extremities were numb, and frost had formed inside his helmet, where his breath had crystallized. But the array was fixed, and the station's communications were back online. The Meridian medical specialist had been waiting for him, scanner in hand. "Your body temperature is dangerously low." They had observed neural pathways flashing concerned orange. "How are you still conscious?" Rusty had laughed through chattering teeth. "Told you. Humans are good with cold. Plus, I had my energy drink." "That is not how biology works," the medical specialist had replied, clearly perplexed. "Your adrenal glands should have exhausted themselves hours ago. Your species continues to defy rational explanation." It was on his way back to his temporary quarters, still shivering, despite the thermal blanket wrapped around his shoulders, that Rusty had heard the faint sound. A high-pitched mewling coming from behind a waste processing unit. Curious, he'd investigated finding a tiny orange kitten, half frozen, and desperately trying to find warmth among the station's exhaust vents. "Hey there, little one," he'd whispered, scooping up the trembling creature. "How'd you get here?" He knew, of course. The station supported several dozen human workers, some of whom undoubtedly smuggled pets aboard despite regulations. This one had either escaped or been abandoned. He'd tucked the kitten inside his jacket, feeling its tiny heart racing against his chest. "Guess we're both breaking the rules today, huh?" "Scan complete," Purr announced, snapping Rusty back to the present. The security officer's compound eyes were wide with alarm as they read the results. "Species identified Felis catus. Terran origin. Carnivorous predator with 60% successful kill ratio." Berg's immobilizer snapped back up, trained now on the tiny kitten, rather than Rusty. "Predator, it's a biological weapon." Rusty couldn't help it, he laughed. The nervous tension, the absurdity of the situation, and the genuine fear on the faces of two beings who collectively outweighed him by several hundred kilograms broke through his attempt at diplomacy. "It's a kitten," he managed between fits of laughter. "Yes, technically a predator, but it hunts mice and small insects. It's about as dangerous as, well, Nothing on this ship is that harmless, actually. Per was already activating the emergency communication channel. Security to command. We have a situation. Human Oxidize has smuggled a Terran apex predator aboard. Requesting immediate containment team and... Oh, for crying out loud, Rusty interrupted, reaching through the containment field, which wasn't designed to stop living tissue, only to analyze it and retrieving the kitten. He held it up to eye level, where it dangled comfortably from his grip, tiny paws batting playfully at his nose. This is not an apex predator. This is a pest control specialist. Berg and Per exchanged confused glances. Pest control, Berg repeated slowly. Yeah. Rodents, insects, small vermin. Cats hunt them. Been helping humans keep our food stores safe for thousands of years. Rusty tucked the kitten back into his jacket pocket, where it curled up contentedly. Perfect for a starship when you think about it. All these dark corners and maintenance tunnels must be paradise for space vermin. Per's antennae quivered uncertainly. Coalition regulations clearly prohibit. Coalition regulations were written by species that never had to deal with rats in their grain silos, Rusty countered. Look, I'll take full responsibility. I'll register her properly, get her vaccinated, whatever bureaucratic hoops you need me to jump through. But she stays with me. Berg lowered his weapon slightly, curiosity overcoming caution. What do you call this? Small predator. Rusty glanced down at the orange ball of fluff now purring in his pocket. Haven't decided yet. Thinking maybe peanut butter. Peanut butter, Per repeated the strange words carefully. Is this a description of its hunting capabilities? Rusty suppressed another laugh. No, it's just a food I like. Comes from Earth. Sweet, sticky stuff. Per sighed, a whistling sound through their mandibles that indicated resignation. I must report this to the captain. Protocol demands. I know, Rusty held up his hands placatingly. Do what you've got to do. But maybe we could downgrade from apex predator biological weapon to harmless companion animal in your report. Per considered this for a moment, then made a notation in their datapad. Incident report updated. Biological entity reclassified from threat designation, life bomb, to ECA-1, peanut butter. Berg, who had been watching the kitten with increasing fascination, cautiously extended one massive clawed finger toward the pocket where the small creature rested. The kitten responded by batting playfully at the enormous digit, showing no fear of the being that could crush it with minimal effort. It is not afraid, Berg observed, sounding impressed despite himself. Cats don't have much of a sense of self-preservation, Rusty explained with a fond smile. Too curious for their own good most of the time. Like humans, Per observed dryly. Rusty grinned. Exactly like humans. Why do you think we get along so well? After completing the documentation, including a hasty registration form for non-standard biological assistance entities, Per finally cleared Rusty to proceed to his quarters. The security officer's final words carried both warning and bemused resignation. Coalition Command will be notified. Expect further questioning. Always do, Rusty replied cheerfully, already heading toward the habitat ring with his furry contraband. Behind him, he could hear Berg asking Per in a hushed voice whether humans typically kept miniature apex predators as companions and what else they might be concealing in their personal quarters. As the doors to the docking bay slid shut behind him, Rusty couldn't help wondering what the security team would think if they knew about the extensive collection of hot sauces hidden in his footlocker substances that would cause chemical burns in most coalition species, but that he considered mildly spicy. Some cultural differences were probably best left undiscovered. Captain Jeriz of the Aegis reviewed the security report for the third time, 14 tentacle tips drumming rhythmically on her console. As a Hydraxian, she prided herself on processing information quickly and efficiently. Their species had evolved as information brokers after all. But human behavior continued to confound even her considerable analytical abilities. Let me ensure I understand correctly, she addressed Per, who stood at rigid attention before her desk. Human Oxidize has brought aboard an unregistered biological entity, classified as a predator, with the stated purpose of pest control. Yes, Captain. Per's antennae twitched nervously. The entity known as peanut butter is apparently a standard human companion species. And this does not concern you. The captain's skin rippled with subtle blue patterns, indicating puzzlement. It does concern me, Captain Per admitted. However, after consulting database archives, I discovered that these cats have indeed cohabitated with humans for approximately 10,000 Earth years. They appear to be a symbiotic species. Captain Jeriz sighed a complex sound involving multiple breathing apparatus. First, the environmental modifications to their quarters, then the insistence on bringing those burning chemical compounds into our food preparation areas, and now predatory companions. Will we ever truly understand humans? Unlikely, Captain Per responded frankly. However, I have taken the liberty of updating our biological containment protocols to include this new entity classification. Very well, the captain conceded. Monitor the situation but take no further action unless this peanut butter demonstrates actual hostility. After all, we need our human crew members. Nobody else is willing to perform maintenance in sub-zero conditions or taste test potentially toxic new food sources. Per nodded, relieved to be dismissed from what could have been a much more uncomfortable meeting. As they exited the captain's office, they made a private note to update the unofficial human hazard inventory maintained by the security team. Currently at 73 entries, it would now need to include Keep's carnivorous companions for amusement. 3 days later, Rusty sat in the common area of Habitat Ring C, ostensibly reviewing maintenance schedules on his datapad, but actually watching with poorly concealed amusement as Peanut Butter explored her new environment. The kitten had adapted remarkably well to life aboard the Aegis, quickly learning to use the small litter box Rusty had improvised from spare parts, and happily consuming protein supplements that approximated her natural diet. More entertaining, however, was the reaction of the non-human crew members to the small feline. Currently, a group of Meridians were observing from what they clearly considered a safe distance, their transparent skin flashing with patterns of curiosity and mild alarm each time the kitten pounced on a shadow or batted at a piece of dust. The creature moves with unexpected speed. One Meridian commented neural pathways pulsing yellow with surprise, as Peanut Butter performed an acrobatic leap from the floor to a chair and back again. Its mass-to-velocity ratio seems improbable. Another Meridian, braver than the rest, had edged closer, extending a slender, translucent finger toward the kitten. Is physical contact safe? Will it interpret my approach as... The Meridian's question was cut short, as Peanut Butter rubbed against their hand, eliciting a startled cascade of purple and blue flashes across the alien's skin. She likes you, Rusty explained, setting aside his datapad. That's how cats show affection. Fascinating, the Meridian replied cautiously, stroking the kitten's fur. It generates acoustic vibrations when touched. That's purring, Rusty said. Also a sign of contentment. The first Meridian, still maintaining a safe distance, asked, Is it true this species has successfully eliminated entire populations of other organisms on your planet? Rusty winced. Well, yes, in some ecosystems where they were introduced without natural predators, they did cause some problems. But that's not. Yet you keep them as companions. The Meridian interrupted neural pathways, flickering with the equivalent of a confused frown, despite knowing their destructive capabilities. Before Rusty could formulate a response that wouldn't make humans sound completely irrational, Berg entered the common area, immediately spotting the gathering around the kitten. The massive Urson approached with surprising gentleness, for his size, crouching down to observe Peanut Butter more closely. The predator appears to have grown, Berg noted, extending one enormous clawed finger toward the kitten, who immediately began batting at it with tiny paws. Just a little, Rusty confirmed. She's still a baby, basically. She'll get bigger over the next few months. Berg looked alarmed. How much bigger? Rusty held his hands about 30 centimeters apart. About this size eventually. Still pretty small. The security officer seemed relieved. That is acceptable. I feared it might grow to human proportions. The image of a human-sized house cat caused Rusty to choke back laughter. No, definitely not. Though there are some bigger cat species on Earth, lions, tigers that get much larger. The aliens exchanged horrified glances. These lions. 1. Meridian ventured cautiously. They are not kept as companions, surely. Well, not typically, no, Rusty admitted. But there are some you know what, never mind. Let's stick with discussing house cats for now. A wise decision. Berg agreed solemnly, continuing to let Peanut Butter attack his finger with playful ferocity. The massive Urson seemed utterly captivated by the tiny predator, his usual stoic demeanor softening visibly. You know, Rusty said conversationally, if you want you could hold her. She seems to like you. Berg looked simultaneously terrified and tempted by the offer. After a moment's hesitation, he extended his massive paws, and Rusty gently transferred the kitten into them. Peanut Butter looked even smaller, cradled in Berg's enormous hands, but showed no fear, immediately beginning to climb up his arm toward his shoulder. It shows no fear, Berg observed with what sounded like respect. Despite the obvious power differential. Yeah, cats are pretty fearless, Rusty agreed. Or maybe just too stupid to know when they're outmatched. Like humans, one of the Meridians commented. Rusty grinned. Exactly like humans. The impromptu gathering was interrupted by an announcement over the ship's communication system. Engineering team to maintenance shaft 42G. Emergency repairs required to thermal regulation system. Rusty sighed, standing up and retrieving Peanut Butter from Berg's shoulder, where she had perched like a tiny furry gargoyle. Duty calls. Thanks for entertaining my little predator, everyone. As he headed toward the engineering section with the kitten tucked safely in his jacket pocket, Rusty reflected that bringing Peanut Butter aboard might have actually improved interspecies relations. Nothing united diverse groups quite like collective bewilderment at human behavior. The emergency and maintenance shaft 42G turned out to be more serious than initially reported. A series of power fluctuations had damaged the thermal regulation system for an entire section of the habitat ring, causing temperatures to plummet dangerously. For most of the crew, extended exposure to such cold would be life-threatening. Estimated repair time. Chief Engineer Zolix, a Vesperian with iridescent exoskeleton and 4 specialized manipulator limbs, asked as Rusty examined the damaged conduits. At least 5 hours, Rusty replied, already unsealing his toolkit. The primary coolant loop is compromised and will need to reroute through the auxiliary systems while replacing the damaged components. Zolix's compound eyes blinked in a pattern indicating concern. Temperature will continue to drop during repairs. Safety protocols recommend maximum exposure of 2 hours for humanoid species. Rusty waved away the concern. I'll be fine. Humans have pretty good cold tolerance, especially if we keep moving. He didn't mention the flask of energy drink in his pocket, a potent concoction of stimulants that would keep his metabolism running hot, despite the dropping temperature. Very well, Zolix conceded, though their antennae vibrated with skepticism. Maintenance drones will deliver replacement parts within 30 minutes. Communication check-ins required every hour. Got it, boss, Rusty confirmed, already focusing on the tangle of conduits and circuitry exposed behind the access panel. As Zolix departed, he pulled Peanut Butter from his pocket and set her on a nearby storage container. Looks like you're my assistant today, Peanut. Try not to electrocute yourself. The kitten mewed in what Rusty chose to interpret as agreement, then curled into a tight ball to preserve warmth as the ambient temperature continued to drop. Rusty worked methodically, his breath soon visible as white plumes in the increasingly frigid air. By the time the replacement parts arrived, frost had begun to form on the metal surfaces around him. 4 hours into the repair, Rusty's fingers had lost most of their dexterity, and he was shivering violently despite the stimulants coursing through his system. He checked on Peanut Butter regularly, grateful that her thick fur provided better insulation than his maintenance uniform. Still, he had moved her into an interior pocket of his jacket, where she could benefit from his body heat. Almost there, he muttered more to keep himself alert than for the kitten's benefit. Just need to reconnect the primary flow regulator and restart the system. His communicator beeped, indicating an incoming transmission. "Human oxidize," came Zolix's concerned voice. "Your vital signs are approaching critical levels. Medical team has been alerted. Abort repair and evacuate immediately." Rusty grimaced, hands shaking as he manipulated the delicate components. "Negative, Chief. I'm 90% done. Evacuating now would mean starting over with a fresh crew, and this section would be uninhabitable by then." He took another swig from his flask, feeling the chemicals burn through his system. "Just give me 30 more minutes." There was a pause, then Zolix's reluctant agreement. 30 minutes, no extensions, human." 28 minutes later, with alarms blaring warnings about his deteriorating vital signs, Rusty sealed the access panel and activated the restart sequence for the thermal regulation system. A low hum indicated power returning to the system, and almost immediately warm air began circulating through the maintenance shaft. "Repairs complete," he reported through chattering teeth. "System functioning at 87% capacity. Should stabilize at 90+ within the hour." "Medical team en route to your location," Zolix replied. "Remain where you are." Rusty sank down against the wall, exhaustion overtaking him as the stimulants began to wear off. He gently patted the pocket containing Peanut Butter, feeling the reassuring warmth of the small creature against his chest. "We did it, little one," he murmured. "Not bad for a day's work." When the medical team arrived, led by a concerned-looking Meridian specialist, they found Rusty half-conscious, his core temperature dangerously low, but with a smile on his blue-tinged lips. From his pocket, Peanut Butter peered out curiously at the newcomers, apparently unaffected by the ordeal. "Incredible," the Meridian physician commented as they scanned Rusty's vital signs. "By all physiological metrics, he should be in critical condition. Yet his organs continue to function efficiently despite severe hypothermia." They glanced at the small, feline face poking out from Rusty's pocket. "And the predator appears completely unharmed." As they helped Rusty onto a stretcher, one of the medical assistants, a junior Urson, whispered with undisguised awe, "I heard humans once survived on a planet where water regularly froze solid on the surface. Is that true?" The Meridian physician nodded gravely. "Not only survived, but thrived. Their homeworld experiences temperature variations that would be fatal to most sentient species. It is why they are both so valuable and so concerning as allies." "And their predator companions?" the assistant asked, eyeing Peanut Butter with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Apparently equally resilient," the physician replied. "Another reminder that Earth evolved some of the most terrifying life forms in the known galaxy." After a brief stay in the medical bay, where the Meridian physician had fussed over his reckless disregard for biological limitations, Rusty was released to his quarters with orders to rest for at least 48 hours. He had no intention of complying fully with these instructions, but he did appreciate the opportunity to catch up on sleep and spend time with his new companion. Peanut Butter had quickly adapted to life in his small cabin, claiming various surfaces as her territory, and establishing a routine that seemed to involve equal parts sleeping, playing, and getting into trouble. Rusty had improvised toys from spare parts and watched with amusement as she attacked them with predatory ferocity. On the second day of his mandated rest, his door chime sounded. When he opened it, he was surprised to find Pear standing in the corridor, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Officer Pear Rusty greeted them, stepping aside to allow entry. "To what do I owe the pleasure? More paperwork for my little biological weapon." Pear's antennae twitched with what might have been embarrassment. "Not exactly. I wish to inquire after your well-being following the maintenance shaft incident." Rusty raised an eyebrow, surprised by the personal nature of the visit. I'm fine. Takes more than a little cold to keep a human down. So I have observed, Purr replied, their compound eyes scanning the cabin until they located Peanut Butter, who was currently stalking an imaginary prey item under the small desk. And your companion creature. It is also well. She's thriving, Rusty confirmed. Cats are pretty adaptable. Purr seemed to be struggling with something mandibles, clicking nervously before they finally said, "The security team has been reviewing the incident. Your willingness to endure physically damaging conditions to complete necessary repairs is noteworthy." Rusty shrugged. It's what I'm here for. Humans are good at pushing our biological limits when needed. Yes, Purr agreed. This has been observed repeatedly. It is why, despite the numerous regulation violations your species accumulates, the Coalition continues to value human crew members. They hesitated, then added, "It is also why many non-human crew members find your kind simultaneously fascinating and terrifying." Rusty laughed. "We're really not that scary once you get to know us." Purr's gaze shifted to Peanut Butter, who had now noticed the visitor and was approaching cautiously, tail held high. Perhaps. Yet you choose to surround yourselves with predatory companions, consume substances that would poison other species, and routinely endure environmental conditions that exceed your own biological safety parameters. Before Rusty could respond, Peanut Butter reached Pear's feet and began rubbing against one of their chitinous legs, purring loudly. The security officer froze, clearly uncertain how to respond to this overture. "She likes you," Rusty explained. "That's a friendly gesture." Purr stood perfectly still. "What is the appropriate response?" "You could pet her if you want. She won't bite." With extreme caution, Purr extended one six-fingered hand toward the kitten. Peanut Butter immediately rubbed her head against it, purring even louder. After a moment, Pear tentatively stroked the soft fur, and their compound eyes widened with what seemed like surprise. "It is softer than expected," they commented. "And the vibration function is most unusual." "Purring," Rusty corrected automatically. "And yeah, cat fur is pretty soft. Part of why we like keeping them around, I guess. That and the pest control." Purr continued petting Peanut Butter for several moments, seeming to gain confidence in the interaction. Finally, they straightened up and assumed a more formal posture. "I should inform you that Captain Jeriz has officially approved your request to maintain this creature aboard the Aegis, provided it remains under your supervision and causes no disturbances." Rusty grinned. "That's great news. Thank you for letting me know." Additionally, Purr continued, "the engineering department has submitted a commendation for your work in Maintenance Shaft 42G. It seems your biological peculiarities continue to be valuable to the mission, despite the associated complications." "Happy to be of service," Rusty replied with a mock salute. "Even if we humans do keep breaking your rules." Purr's antennae twitched, in what might have been amusement. Indeed, the security team has officially updated the human hazard inventory to include keeps dangerous predators as pets, as item 74. Rusty laughed. "I'm honored. What are the others on that list, if you don't mind me asking?" "That information is classified," Purr replied primly, but their mandibles clicked in a pattern Rusty had come to recognize as their species' version of a smile. "Though I can confirm that consumes corrosive substances for pleasure and deliberately exposes self to dangerous temperature extremes feature prominently." As Pear prepared to leave, Peanut Butter made one final bid for attention, standing on her hind legs to paw at the security officer's uniform. Purr hesitated, then leaned down to give the kitten one last pat. "Your species continues to confound expectations," they observed. "Both of your species, it seems." Rusty smiled. "That's what makes life interesting, don't you think?" After Pear departed, Rusty scooped up Peanut Butter and held her at eye level. "Look at you making friends with the security team. Keep this up and they might forget you're a terrifying apex predator." The kitten mewed innocently, then batted at Rusty's nose with one tiny paw. You know, he told her conspiratorially, I think we're going to get along just fine on this ship. Between your cute factor and my ability to not die in extreme conditions, we've got the whole crew wrapped around our fingers. And pause. Peanut Butter purred her agreement, and Rusty felt a surge of affection for the small creature that had already become such an important part of his life aboard the Aegis. In the vast emptiness of space, surrounded by aliens who viewed humans with a mixture of respect and trepidation, it was comforting to have a reminder of Earth, even if that reminder was technically a miniature predator. In the weeks that followed, Peanut Butter became something of a celebrity aboard the Aegis. Word of the small Terran predator spread through the ship's diverse crew, and Rusty frequently found himself fielding questions about feline biology behavior and Earth's peculiar tradition of keeping carnivorous companions. The engineering team had taken a particular liking to the kitten, discovering that her size and agility made her useful for retrieving small objects lost in hard-to-reach areas of the ship's complex machinery. Chief Engineer Zolix had initially been skeptical, but after Peanut Butter recovered a crucial calibration tool that had fallen into a narrow access shaft, they had officially designated her an auxiliary retrieval specialist in the department logs. Your small predator has proven unexpectedly useful, Zolix commented during one maintenance shift watching, as Peanut Butter squeezed into a ventilation duct too small for any of the ship's maintenance drones. Though its hunting instincts are occasionally problematic. Rusty winced, remembering the incident the previous week, when Peanut Butter had pounced on a holographic projection during a senior staff briefing, causing momentary chaos, and earning Rusty a stern lecture from Captain Jeriz about proper containment of Terran fauna during official proceedings. She's still learning ship protocols, Rusty defended his companion. Besides, she's already caught 3 of those space roaches that have been getting into the food storage areas. The ones too small for the pest control systems to detect. Zolix's antennae vibrated in what Rusty had come to recognize as their species' version of a thoughtful hum. Indeed. Perhaps more of these cats would be beneficial to station operations. Rusty suppressed a grin at the thought of the Aegis overrun with felines. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One shipboard predator is probably enough for now. From inside the ventilation duct came a triumphant mewl, followed by Peanut Butter backing out with a small metallic component clutched in her jaws. She dropped it at Zolix's feet with an air of unmistakable pride. Successful retrieval. Zolix noted carefully picking up the component, a specialized data crystal that had been dislodged during routine maintenance. Most efficient. Rusty bent down to scratch behind Peanut Butter's ears, earning a loud purr of contentment. Good job, Peanut. See, she's earning her keep. An admirable quality, Zolix agreed. One might observe similarities between your species, both small, by galactic standards, yet surprisingly effective in specialized roles. Rusty laughed. I've never thought of it that way, but I suppose you're right. Humans and cats making ourselves useful despite being underestimated. Not underestimated, Zolix corrected, multifaceted eyes gleaming. Accurately assessed as hazardous yet valuable. The true test of Peanut Butter's status aboard the Aegis came 3 months after her arrival, during a routine diplomatic visit from a coalition inspection team. The inspectors, a humorless group of Hydraxians and Nexians, were conducting a thorough evaluation of the ship's operations protocols and compliance with coalition regulations. Rusty had been careful to keep Peanut Butter confined to his quarters during the inspection, well aware that the presence of an unauthorized Terran predator might raise uncomfortable questions. However, fate, or perhaps feline mischief, had other plans. During the inspector's tour of the engineering section, led by Captain Jeriz and Chief Engineer Zolix, Rusty was performing routine maintenance on a power distribution node. He had left Peanut Butter safely locked in his cabin, or so he thought, until a familiar orange shape darted across the corridor directly in front of the inspection party. The lead inspector, a senior Hydraxian with elaborately patterned tentacles, indicating high rank, stopped abruptly. Captain Jeriz, What was that creature? Captain Jerese's skin rippled with patterns that Rusty recognized as the Hadraxian equivalent of alarm. I'm not certain, Inspector. Perhaps one of our maintenance drones. It appeared to be organic. The inspector insisted 14 tentacle tips twitching with suspicion. Quite small orange coloration, rapid movement. From his position partially hidden behind the open access panel, Rusty felt a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. How had Peanut Butter escaped? He'd triple-checked the door lock before leaving his quarters. Chief Engineer Zolix, displaying a level of quick thinking that Rusty hadn't expected from the usually by-the-book Vesperian, smoothly intervened. You must have observed our new biological maintenance assistant. An experimental program recently approved by Coalition Research Division. The inspector's tentacles writhed skeptically. I have received no notification of such a program. It is quite recent, Captain Jerese joined in her skin, now displaying patterns of confident authority. The creature is a specialized biological tool evolved on Earth to detect and eliminate vermin too small for standard detection systems. At that moment, as if on cue, Peanut Butter emerged from behind a storage container, proudly carrying a dead space roach, nearly half her size. She trotted directly to the inspection party and dropped her prize at the lead inspector's feet, then sat back on her haunches with an air of unmistakable accomplishment. There was a moment of stunned silence as the inspectors stared at the small predator and her kill. Then, the lead inspector's tentacles shifted into a pattern indicating reluctant appreciation. Most efficient, they acknowledged, though unconventional. Earth species often are, Captain Jerese replied smoothly. We have found that certain biological solutions can supplement our technological systems in unexpected ways. The inspector bent lower to examine Peanut Butter more closely. Fascinating adaptation. What is this creature called? Rusty held his breath, praying that the captain would come up with something appropriately technical sounding. This is a Class ECA-1 biological maintenance entity, Captain Jerese stated with perfect composure, colloquially known as Peanut Butter. Rusty nearly choked, trying to suppress his laughter. The inspector's tentacles twitched in apparent confusion at the designation, but made a notation in their datapad nonetheless. Very well. I would recommend formal documentation of this program for future inspections, but the results appear satisfactory. After the inspection party moved on, Rusty emerged from his hiding place and quickly scooped up Peanut Butter before she could cause any further diplomatic incidents. You little escape artist, he whispered. How did you get out? The kitten merely purred, seemingly quite pleased with herself. Captain Jerese lingered behind fixing Rusty with a multifaceted stare that somehow managed to convey both exasperation and amusement across species barriers. Human oxidize. I believe we had an agreement regarding containment of your biological maintenance entity. Rusty winced. Yes, Captain. I'm really sorry. I don't know how she got out. I triple-checked the door lock. The captain's skin displayed ripples of what might have been resignation. Perhaps your companion has absorbed some of your species' notorious ingenuity. She glanced down at Peanut Butter, who was now contentedly grooming herself in Rusty's arms. Nevertheless, her timing was fortuitous. The inspection team seemed quite impressed by her efficiency. So, we're not in trouble, Rusty ventured cautiously. Not at present, Captain Jerese replied. However, I expect you to enhance your containment measures immediately. And her skin briefly displayed patterns of reluctant admiration. You might consider bringing your maintenance entity to the hydroponics section. We have detected evidence of small pests damaging the vegetation. Rusty grinned. Yes, Captain. Peanut Butter would be happy to assist. As Captain Jerese departed to rejoin the inspection team, Rusty held Peanut Butter up to eye level. You're something else, you know, that's saving our bacon with your perfect timing. The kitten mewed innocently, green eyes blinking slowly. Though I still want to know how you got out of my quarters. Later that evening, reviewing security footage from his cabin, Rusty discovered the answer. Peanut Butter had somehow managed to activate the door's emergency release mechanism, a feature designed to allow evacuation during power failures. The footage clearly showed her repeatedly batting at the small panel until it activated, followed by her triumphant exit through the automatically opening door. "Well, I'll be damned," Rusty muttered, both impressed and alarmed by his pet's problem-solving abilities. "Looks like I'm going to need to kitten-proof the emergency systems." He sent the footage to Berg and Pear with a brief message. "Might want to add unexpectedly intelligent to item 74 on your human hazard inventory." Pear's reply came almost immediately. "Modification approved. Security protocols updated accordingly." 6 months after Peanut Butter's arrival aboard the Aegis, the now fully grown cat had become an established part of the crew's daily life. She had her own official designation in the ship's roster, Biological Maintenance Specialist, Felis Catus, a specialized diet prepared by the Nutrition Department, and even a tiny identification chip that allowed her to activate certain doors throughout the ship, a concession made after repeated escapes had convinced Captain Jerez that restricted access was more practical than constant security alerts. Rusty had observed with amusement, as various crew members initially wary of the small predator gradually developed affection for her. Berg, in particular, had become a frequent visitor to Rusty's quarters, ostensibly to monitor the Terran entity's development, but actually to play with Peanut Butter using toys he had crafted himself from spare materials. Even Pear, despite their initial alarm, had been known to allow Peanut Butter to curl up on their lap during security briefings, absently stroking the cat's fur while reviewing protocol updates. When questioned about this behavior, Pear had primly replied that it was merely practical environmental adaptation to the presence of a non-hostile biological entity. The ship was currently in orbit around a small frozen moon in the Arcturus system, conducting mineral surveys before the mining teams would be deployed to the surface. Rusty had been assigned to the advanced team tasked with setting up the initial base camp and environmental systems. Surface temperature is -120 Celsius. The mission coordinator, a Meridian named Lix, informed the gathered team. Atmospheric pressure negligible. High radiation levels from the nearby gas giant. Standard safety protocols apply. Rusty nodded already, mentally calculating what additional equipment he would need. Humans were among the few species aboard the Aegis capable of working effectively in such extreme conditions, even with environmental suits. Their natural endurance and ability to function in diverse gravitational fields made them ideal for advanced teamwork. Deployment in 6 hours, Lix continued. Expected surface time 48 hours for initial setup. Questions. "Who's going to look after Peanut Butter while I'm gone?" Rusty asked, only half joking. He had become accustomed to the cat's constant presence and was genuinely concerned about her care during his absence. Lix's neural pathways flashed what might have been the Meridian equivalent of an eye roll. The biological entity has been temporarily assigned to Security Officer Berg, who has volunteered for caretaking duties. Berg, standing at the back of the briefing room, gave a tusked grin that might have been terrifying if Rusty hadn't come to know the Urson so well. "The Predator will be safe with me," he rumbled. "We have scheduled hunting simulations in Cargo Bay 3. Rusty raised an eyebrow. "Hunting simulations?" "Small mobile targets," Berg explained with obvious enthusiasm. "For practice. It enjoys the chase." "Right," Rusty said slowly, deciding not to ask for further details. "Well, thanks for watching her. Just don't let her get into the ventilation system again. Took 3 days to find her last time." "Precautions have been implemented," Per interjected from their position near the door, "including temporary deactivation of her identification chip's door access privileges." Rusty suppressed a smile at the seriousness with which his shipmates approached cat-sitting duties. "Sounds like you've got it covered." After the briefing, as Rusty was gathering his gear from his quarters, Berg arrived to collect Peanut Butter. The massive Urson moved with surprising gentleness as he coaxed the cat into a specialized carrier he had constructed, complete with viewing ports and climate control. "You've really gone all out," Rusty observed, impressed by the carrier's design. Berg's ears flattened slightly in what Rusty had come to recognize as embarrassment. The Predator requires proper accommodation for optimal functioning. Of course, Rusty agreed carefully, keeping his expression neutral. Optimal functioning is important. As he handed over Peanut Butter's food supplements and favorite toys, Rusty was struck by how much things had changed in the past 6 months. What had begun as a simple act of compassion, rescuing a freezing kitten from certain death, had evolved into something much more significant. Peanut Butter had become more than just his pet. She was a bridge between species, a common point of interest that transcended the biological and cultural differences that often created barriers aboard the Aegis. "Take good care of her," Rusty said, scratching Peanut Butter behind the ears one last time before Berg secured the carrier. "She's special." Berg nodded solemnly. "The Predator will be protected. This I swear on my clan's honor." As Rusty watched Berg depart with Peanut Butter, he reflected that perhaps this was what made humans unique within the Coalition, not just their physical adaptability or willingness to take risks, but their capacity to form connections with other species, to find common ground in unexpected places. He finished packing his gear, including the silver flask of energy drink that had become something of a personal trademark. Whatever challenges awaited on the frozen surface below, he was ready to face them. And when he returned, Peanut Butter would be waiting, probably with a new collection of admirers and at least one more entry in the ever-expanding human hazard inventory. Life aboard the Aegis was never dull, especially when humans and their pets were involved. As Captain Jeriz had once observed, with patterns of bemused resignation rippling across her skin, the only thing more terrifying than a human is its pet. Rusty wouldn't have it any other way. The surface of the frozen moon was exactly as inhospitable as the mission briefing had indicated. Rusty and the advance team, consisting of himself and 2 other humans plus a Vesperian specialist whose exoskeleton provided natural radiation protection, had established the base camp in a shallow crater that offered some shelter from the constant, high-energy particles streaming from the nearby gas giant. Working methodically in the low gravity, they had deployed the environmental habitat's power generators and preliminary mining equipment. Rusty was currently outside the main habitat, finalizing the connections for the thermal regulation system that would keep the interior at a comfortable temperature for the diverse species that would occupy it in the coming weeks. His environmental suit's internal temperature had been steadily dropping for the past hour, indicating that the heating elements were struggling against the extreme cold. A warning light on his helmet display showed that he had approximately 30 minutes of effective protection remaining before hypothermia would become a serious risk. "Plenty of time," he muttered to himself, fingers working deftly, despite the cold seeping through his gloves. He had already consumed half of his energy drink, feeling the stimulants keeping his body temperature elevated, beyond what the suit alone could manage. His communicator crackled with an incoming transmission. "Human oxidized status update required," came the voice of Thora, another human engineer, who was coordinating from inside the habitat. "Almost done," Rusty replied. "Primary thermal exchangers online, just calibrating the backup systems." "Your suit telemetry shows critical temperature warnings," Thora noted, concerned. "Protocol requires immediate return to habitat." Rusty glanced at the warning indicators and shrugged, a gesture lost in the bulky suit. "I've got at least 20 minutes. Better to finish now than have to come back out." There was a pause, then Thora's resigned voice. "You and your superhuman cold tolerance. Fine, but if you turn into a popsicle, I'm not explaining it to Captain Jeriz." Deal." Rusty agreed cheerfully, returning his focus to the delicate calibration process. 15 minutes later, with the backup systems successfully online and his suit now blaring urgent temperature warnings, Rusty finally headed back toward the habitat airlock. His extremities had gone numb and he was shivering violently, but the job was done. The satisfaction of completing a difficult task in extreme conditions was a feeling he had come to savor during his time with the Coalition, a reminder of humanity's unique contributions to the interstellar alliance. As he cycled through the airlock and removed his frost-covered helmet, he was greeted by Thora's exasperated expression. "You look half dead," she observed bluntly. Rusty grinned through chattering teeth. "Just a bit chilly. Nothing a hot drink won't fix." Thora rolled her eyes. "This is exactly why aliens find us terrifying, you know. Normal species avoid pain and danger. We run straight at it with a smile." "It's our charm," Rusty countered, peeling off his frozen outer layers. "Besides, the thermal system is fully operational now. No more freezing habitats." "Hero of the day," Thora acknowledged with a mix of sarcasm and genuine appreciation. "There's an incoming communication for you, by the way. From the Aegis. Something about your cat." Rusty paused, suddenly concerned. "Peanut Butter, is she okay?" "No details, just a request for you to contact Security Officer Berg when possible." Thora's expression turned curious. "I still can't believe you smuggled a cat aboard a coalition vessel. That's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever heard." "Bit of both," Rusty admitted, already moving toward the communication terminal. "Though technically, she's now a biological maintenance specialist, according to her official designation." Thora laughed. "Only you could get a pet cat classified as essential personnel." At the terminal, Rusty established a connection with the Aegis, requesting Berg specifically. When the Ursan's tusked face appeared on the screen, Rusty was immediately concerned by his solemn expression. "Is everything okay with Peanut Butter?" he asked without preamble. Berg's ears flattened slightly. "The Predator is physically well but has demonstrated unexpected behaviors." Rusty frowned. "What kind of behaviors?" "It appears to have formed an alliance with other small maintenance entities aboard the ship," Berg replied, his deep voice unusually hesitant. "Specifically, the cleaning drones." "An alliance," Rusty repeated, puzzled. "What does that mean exactly?" Berg shifted uncomfortably before continuing. "The Predator has been observed riding atop the cleaning drones to access areas otherwise restricted to it. Security footage shows at least 7 instances of this behavior in the past 12 hours. Rusty struggled to keep a straight face as he pictured Peanut Butter surfing around the ship on maintenance robots. "I see. And has this caused any problems?" "The Predator accessed the captain's private dining area during a diplomatic function," Berg reported gravely. "It proceeded to perform for the assembled dignitaries." "Perform?" Rusty echoed, now genuinely curious. "It captured a small maintenance drone and presented it to the Arcturian ambassador as what Pear described as a hunting trophy," Berg explained. "The ambassador was most impressed by its predatory efficiency and has requested information about acquiring similar entities for their home station." Rusty couldn't contain his laughter any longer. "Let me get this straight. Peanut Butter crashed a diplomatic dinner, showed off her hunting skills, and now the ambassadors want cats of their own." Berg's expression remained serious. "Captain Jariz has requested a formal briefing on appropriate deployment of biological maintenance entities in diplomatic contexts upon your return." "Of course she has," Rusty sighed, though he couldn't help feeling a surge of pride in his feline companion's diplomatic impact. "Tell Peanut Butter to behave until I get back, and maybe restrict her access to the maintenance drones." "Attempted restrictions have proven ineffective," Berg admitted. "The Predator appears to have established communication with the drone's basic AI. They now cooperate to achieve mutual objectives." The implications of this unexpected development were both amusing and slightly alarming. "So, basically, my cat has hacked the ship's cleaning system and is using it to expand her territory." Berg nodded solemnly. "An accurate assessment. Per has updated the human hazard inventory accordingly. Human companion predators demonstrate unexpected technological adaptability." "Item 75, Rusty guessed. "Item 76, Berg corrected. "Item 75 was added last week. Humans intentionally ingest neurotoxins for recreational purposes, after the incident with Dr. Keller and the coffee contest." Rusty winced, remembering the chaos that had ensued when the ship's human medical officer had introduced several curious crew members to espresso. Right. That was unfortunate. Indeed, Berg agreed. Return to the Aegis is recommended as soon as mission parameters allow. The Predator appears to miss your presence. The thought warmed Rusty more effectively than the habitat's heating system. Tell her I'll be home soon, and Berg, thanks for looking after her. The massive Ursan's expression softened slightly. The Predator is acceptable company. Its hunting instincts are admirable. After ending the communication, Rusty turned to find Thora watching him with undisguised amusement. Your cat has formed an alliance with the cleaning drones. That might be the most on-brand thing I've ever heard about you, Oxidize. Rusty shrugged, unable to suppress his grin. What can I say? Adaptability runs in the family. 2 days later, the advance team's mission complete, Rusty returned to the Aegis. As he stepped through the airlock, he was greeted by an unusual sight, Per Berg and Captain Jerez herself, waiting in a formal reception line. Behind them, a group of alien dignitaries observed with obvious curiosity. And at the center of attention, perched regally atop a cleaning drone that hovered half a meter above the deck, sat Peanut Butter. Human Oxidize. Captain Jerez greeted him, skin patterns displaying what he'd come to recognize as diplomatic formality, with underlying exasperation. Your presence has been requested by the Arcturian delegation. Rusty blinked in confusion. The Arcturian delegation? What for? An elegant alien stepped forward, their crystalline exoskeleton catching the light in hypnotic patterns. We wish to discuss the deployment of Terran biomaintenance entities within our jurisdiction, they announced in the formal tones of a practiced diplomat. Your Peanut Butter has demonstrated remarkable capabilities that our security forces believe could be beneficial. Rusty struggled to process this unexpected development. You want cats for security. For integrated pest control and security applications, the Arcturian clarified. The Coalition Science Directorate has expressed interest in a formal research program, with you as the primary consultant. Rusty shot a questioning look at Captain Jerez, who responded with skin patterns that clearly communicated, "This was not my idea, but it is happening regardless." I would be honored to assist, Rusty managed, falling back on diplomatic platitudes, while his mind raced to catch up with this bizarre turn of events. Though I should mention that cats are somewhat independent-minded. The Arcturian's crystalline appendages shimmered in what might have been amusement. So we have observed. This independence appears to be a feature, not a defect. Your companion entity has already demonstrated impressive problem-solving abilities. At that moment, as if aware she was the topic of conversation, Peanut Butter directed her cleaning drone mount to hover closer to Rusty. With practiced grace, she leapt from the drone to his shoulder, resuming her favorite perch. The drone remained nearby, seemingly awaiting further instructions. I see you two have been busy while I was gone, Rusty murmured to the cat, scratching behind her ears and earning a loud purr in response. The Arcturian delegation will expect a full briefing on cat deployment strategies at 800 hours tomorrow. Captain Jerez informed him, skin patterns now showing unmistakable resignation, mixed with a hint of amusement. I suggest you prepare accordingly. As the official greeting party disbanded, Pear lingered behind mandibles, clicking in their species equivalent of a throat clearing. Human Oxidize, the security team has prepared a comprehensive report on your companion's activities during your absence. You may find it informative. Rusty accepted the offered datapad with trepidation. How bad is it? Item 77 has been added to the human hazard inventory, Per replied, antennae twitching slightly. Human companion predators demonstrate leadership capabilities when separated from their primary human. Rusty raised an eyebrow. Leadership capabilities? The Predator organized a coordinated search pattern, utilizing 17 maintenance drones, to locate a coolant leak in maintenance shaft 38C. Per explained, compound eyes, blinking rapidly, in what Rusty had come to recognize as their version of bemused disbelief. Chief Engineer Zolix has submitted a formal commendation. With growing amazement, Rusty scanned the security report. According to the meticulously documented observations, Peanut Butter had indeed established something resembling communication with the ship's maintenance drones, using them as transportation tools, and even distractions during what the report clinically described as unauthorized access events. "She did all this in just 48 hours, Rusty asked, impressed, despite himself. 47 hours and 22 minutes, Per corrected, precisely. The security team is concerned about what might occur during a longer absence. Rusty glanced at Peanut Butter, who blinked back at him with an expression of perfect feline innocence. "I'm a little concerned myself," he admitted, though also kind of proud if I'm being honest. Per's antennae twitched in what might have been exasperation. A very human response. The security team anticipated as much. As Per departed, Rusty addressed his feline companion directly. "Making friends with the robots, huh? Pretty clever for a supposed simple pet." Peanut Butter merely purred louder, rubbing her head against his chin in apparent contentment at his return. The cleaning drone that had been her mount remained hovering nearby, almost as if awaiting further instructions. "You know," Rusty mused, as he headed toward his quarters, cat on shoulder and drone, following obediently behind. "I think the Coalition has no idea what they're getting into with this cat deployment program." Peanut Butter mewed in what sounded suspiciously like agreement. Later that evening, as Rusty prepared for the unexpected diplomatic briefing he would need to deliver the following morning, he couldn't help reflecting on the strange journey that had begun with a simple act of compassion on Arcturus Station. What had started as rescuing a freezing kitten had somehow evolved into an interstellar cultural exchange program with potentially far-reaching implications for human coalition relations. Perhaps most surprising was how Peanut Butter had managed to bridge the gap between species in ways that formal diplomatic initiatives had failed to achieve. Her simple presence had humanized the often intimidating human crew members, making them seem more relatable to their alien colleagues. At the same time, she had reinforced the Coalition's fascination with humanity's peculiar traits, their affinity for danger, their attachment to predatory companions, their constant defiance of biological limitations. "The only thing more terrifying than a human is its pet." Rusty quoted Captain Jeriza's observation, aloud, scratching Peanut Butter under the chin as she dozed contentedly on his desk. "I think you might be making quite a name for yourself out here among the stars, little one." The cat opened one eye lazily, then closed it again, the very picture of feline nonchalance. But the cleaning drone that had followed them to Rusty's quarters, and that now appeared to have been permanently reassigned to Peanut Butter's service, whirred softly in the corner. Its sensors focused on the small predator, with what Rusty could have sworn was something like devotion. Somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Galactic Coalition, a new classification was being created, a new protocol established. And aboard the Aegis, the human hazard inventory continued to grow, documenting the strange and sometimes alarming behaviors of Earth's representatives among the stars. Rusty wouldn't have it any other way.